You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun. Hey everybody, Doug Collins back with the Doug Collins Podcast. It is a special day always on the Doug Collins Podcast. After the break, the great Chan Gailey will be with us. He is just going to go into the teams, going to midway through. It's always good to get wisdom from Coach Gailey. He is just amazing at doing this. We've been doing this for a long time. We had our preseason. Now it's time for a midseason adjustment as we go in. We're like the good here on the Doug Collins Podcast. We're like going in for a good chiropractic adjustment. We need the good coach to come in and get us going here. So after the break, we're going to touch into everything else going on. And as it looks like, as we're going to record, and this is at a time, the House may be getting a speaker. We'll have more to say about that later. But we're not going to bet on it either. So anyway, lots going on, but today is all about Coach Gailey. Right after the break, we'll dig into it. Hey, folks, when you look out and you see the country and just the disarray it is, you see the Biden administration, you see the wholesale prices have just went through the roof again. Inflation is tearing us up. If you have your finances all impinged in just a few areas, if you're just in stocks and bonds and you're not diversified, I got some news for you. You need a navigator. You need somebody to help you get to where you need to go with those finances. And I can't think of anybody better to do that than my friends at Legacy Precious Metals. You need precious metals in that portfolio. You need gold and silver. And Legacy Precious Metals, the folks there, they're the navigators. They know how to deal with tough times. They know and how to look ahead and take your personal situation and make it something that can be workable for you in the long term, because that's at the end of the day, that's the one you're most concerned about. You need to make sure that your personal finances and your retirement are secure. You need folks like Legacy Precious Metals helping you in that. They will take the time to learn you. They'll learn your finances. They'll learn where your investment goals are, and they'll help you get there. And metals and gold right now in this kind of crazy inflation, in this kind of crazy economy with the Biden's economy is just, you need that help. And Legacy Precious Metals is the one to do that. So give Legacy Precious Metals a call, 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can always visit them online at legacypminvestments.com, and you can download their free investor's guide. Legacy Precious Metals, they're the ones you need. They're the navigators to help you through these turbulent times. Hey everybody, it's MyPillow's 20th year anniversary, and over 80 million MyPillows have been sold. Mike Lindell and MyPillow wants to thank each of you and every one of you for giving you the lowest price in history on their MyPillows. You will receive a queen-size MyPillow for $19.98. Regular price is $69.98, and just $10 more for a king size. You will receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products, such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, and so much more. This is a time to try out something other than the amazing products that you've had your eye on. Go to mypillow.com, click on the radio podcast square, and use the promo Collins, Collins, to receive this amazing offer on the queen size MyPillow for $19.98, or call 800-986-3994. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. You know how I know that? Because I sleep on a MyPillow every night. Go to mypillow.com and use promo code Collins, Collins, or call 800-986-3994 today. All right. Hey, Coach, glad to have you back with us.
Great to be here.
It is always.
As always. Yeah.
Well, as I said beforehand, it's time for our adjustments. It's time for our little tweaks on the back. I know mine's been a little out of whack here, looking at the games. In a sort of a sum up, let's take college first, because again, college down here in the South is just, second to Sunday morning services. So we got to get this down. Give me your impression so far.
It looks like to me, the dominance is not there, which we've already talked about. Mm-hmm. The only team that is not playing to the level of their competition right now is Michigan. Yeah. Michigan is the one that keeps pounding on people week in and week out. They're not playing to the level. Everybody else sort of, if you don't have the dominant team, then you play to the level of your competition.
Yep.
It's up and down, and everybody seems to be doing that except for them right now. To me, that's how I see it. Anyway,
Yeah. For us Georgia fans who have been Georgia fans forever, and even Alabama fans a little bit, but more Georgia. This, and I don't say this derogatory because I think Kirby's got his team playing. Again, it's the tale of two cities, so to speak, with Georgia. Being number one. If you listen to ESPN, they wrote them off. They're never going to do anything. They never talk about them. It's always Michigan or anybody else. But they have some of the best statistics that they've had on offense in years. They've never had a passing offense, even going back to Stafford, this averaging like they're doing right now. The defense is, in the top, I think 25 or more better in defense, even though but Coach, from your perspective as someone on the sidelines, and then my perspective as someone watching it it's hard to be frustrated with a 6-0 team, but you look at it and it's like, Georgia, wake up. And what you talked about was playing to the level of competition. Is this just going to be the way it is, or is Georgia, are they better than what they're showing?
I've watched them a little bit, not a ton, but in looking at it, there's very few teams that can make things happen without a stellar quarterback. Okay. But Georgia has proven to be able to play at a top level without the so-called stellar quarterback. And that's the one thing to me that I think Georgia fans hold on to, is that we've done this before without, the great quarterback. And this guy is learning. He's getting better. I think he's getting better. He played over at Auburn, and in crunch time he came through. And so I think he's getting better. And the good thing is he's on a team that's going to give him time to progress, give him time to get better. He's going to be in front of a lot of criticism, as every quarterback in the nation is, but especially Georgia quarterbacks face a lot of criticism. So if he can weather that personal storm, the guy looks like he's got a chance to be a pretty decent quarterback before it's over with.
Carson Beck is one of those quarterbacks that come out of college, and I want to talk about this, and so I'm just going to sort of put a plug here, and we'll come back to it. Carson Beck, to me, may end up being one of those quarterbacks that in college never overwhelms anybody, has solid numbers, but then gets to the pros and all of a sudden blossoms. I mean,
he may be, and unlike Stetson, he's bigger. He's got he can see a little better. I'm not sure he has that right now. He doesn't have that charisma, that panache to be able to go out there and win over everything. But I think if they'll let him, he'll work into it because he's got talent.
Yeah, he does have talent. And speaking of Stetson, we've talked about it here on the podcast in the last few weeks ago on our Friday's Finest with James and Chip, and we're in prayer. Whatever going on with Stetson, please get better. That's all I ask. It's just we don't hear a lot out of it, but I hope he gets better in that. But it's going to be interesting. Look, I still think this is, by the way, this is for those, we're taping this week, and Coach has a vested interest in this week. It is Georgia-Florida week, actually, and we do say, as Kirby corrects everybody, it's Georgia-Florida game, not the Florida-Georgia game.
Well, if you go alphabetically, it's Florida, Georgia.
Exactly. And Kirby, studied at Georgia, so we see that. But anyway, one of the better rivalries, it's one of those weird rivalries. It goes up and down, and the outside the field is almost as well known as on the field with Georgia, Florida. I listened to a podcast one time, Coach, on the Georgia, Florida rivalry, and I can't remember what podcast it was, but it talked a lot about when Spurrier and how really the hate of Spurrier for Georgia developed was out of the Georgia-Florida game.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure that, the Florida fans, and I don't know about now, but in years past, it was they hated Florida State, and then they hated Georgia.
Exactly. Exactly. What was it? It was the preppies versus the jorts is what it was called for years. And that, but Florida, I mean, they came through. I mean, Napier seems to be doing enough to hang on right now. I mean, it's a struggle, his talent level. It's just something. It's going to be an interesting game this week, but Georgia Florida is always an interesting game coming into it. From your perspective at Florida, was it a game that the players actually circled, or is this more hype with fans?
Yeah, it was a big deal for players too, because in general, one or the other was always at the top.
Right.
You know, so if Florida was at the top, Georgia wanted to knock them off, and if Georgia was at the top, Florida wanted to knock them off, and it was the fans, built it up even bigger. It's always in Jacksonville, so that made it a special place and a special game. So it was, I mean, you knew that the Georgia-Florida game was a big game. You understood that. There were two, Georgia-Florida and Florida State. Those were the two games. Okay, the rest of them we can live with.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting enough watching it over the years. The Georgia-Florida game is still there for most Georgia fans as well. It's there. Again, a lot of bitterness from the 90s and 2000s with the Georgia-Florida folks. But again, Georgia has been dominated as well. So it's been, like you said, it's been up and down. Georgia, I would love to hear your take. I'm not sure Georgia has a second rival. I mean, Georgia-Florida is I don't think they have that rivalry because Tech is no longer really a rivalry game. It's just not.
Right.
And Auburn has sort of fell off a little bit as well. And the Tennessee-Georgia has never really developed. South Carolina-Georgia has never really developed. Would that be a true statement, or or maybe is it the Auburn, or is it just maybe now it's in the background, the Alabama-Georgia that they never play, but they always end up in the championship, or they end up in late postseason has become the rivalry.
Yeah, it's a bigger game for fans than it is for the players. The games have to be pretty close for it to be, and back and forth for the players to see it as a big game. It's a bigger game because of years past. The Georgia, Auburn. It's bigger for the fans than it is for the players because in the last, I don't know how many years, South Carolina and Auburn haven't been able to, meet what Georgia has.
Right. I think it's going to be interesting, but I do think, and again, I'll admit bias here a little bit. I think Georgia's toughest part of their schedule is the next 5 weeks. I think the next, they've got Tennessee, they got Florida, they got Missouri, they've got Ole Miss, all in the next few weeks. And I think those are all going to be, challenging games for Georgia. They have Tennessee at home, Ole Miss at home. They got Missouri at home too, I guess.
Yeah.
So they're going to have a lot at home. They're going to be in Sanford, which is a built-in. Do you think that's another thing? We always hear about going to LSU, and from everything I've ever heard, I would love to go to a night game at LSU. I've just heard it's off the chain. It's just, amazing home field advantage. I've been to Tuscaloosa. I've seen a game there. I mean, I hear about the Horseshoe and hear about the Michigan Stadium and all. But, do you think in some ways that Georgia, especially in the last couple of years, and I would only say into the last couple of years, that Georgia has developed a place that people just don't want to go play for sound and everything else?
Yeah. And anytime you get a very vocal crowd, which Georgia has become a very vocal crowd, it's a tough place to play now. But LSU at night, I don't know. There's something about the air that keeps the sound in there. And, I told people playing at LSU was like playing in the bottom of a coffee cup. You felt like that the stands went straight up and everything was right on top of you. That was the most intimidating place I ever played, was at LSU. It was amazing. But as Florida, if you play at Florida, you never play in Sanford Stadium. So,
right.
You don't know.
If Kirby had his way though, from every if you glean into Kirby would prefer it to be home and home. And you just get that feeling. And now that they have this 2-year gap, in 26, 27, or 25, 26, and they're already looking to take it to Orlando or somewhere. Kirby's, I was, again, it's going to be interesting from the money standpoint, but Kirby's always wanted to get that back home and home.
Yeah. And if you move it to somewhere else other than Jacksonville, I don't know. It just seems like that game ought to be in Jacksonville.
It does. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's always the old Gator Bowl. Now it's the big stadium and everything.
Yeah.
And
Auburn, Alabama used to play in Birmingham every year, and then now they're home and home, and so it's not unprecedented to take a traditional game and move it to something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Well, let's move on a little bit, Coach, because again, in this sort of, and I call it the meh year. Okay, there's been decent games, but it's not. We started the year with all the hype of prime. Colorado, everything's going good, and here's the sad part, because after about 3 weeks, everybody had them winning the national title. When most of us looked at it and said that ain't gonna happen, but now they're in a position where they've done far better than they did last year. They showed themselves in their inexperience, especially with Stanford. That was a bad loss. That was one that Prime can, Deion can go back into the locker room and say, y'all guys ain't what you think you are. Okay. And really get at it. But now, so the successes have been overshadowed. USC, again, I think an interesting statistic, and this goes back to why I think the Heisman ought to just be renamed a quarterback's award and not a best player in the country award. What do you see in Caleb? And I know James, our producer, who we do Friday's Finest, and we go back and forth about this. I'm not a fan of Caleb Williams. I think he's a great guy, good, whatever. But the statistics, go to the data. Against all the runaround teams, he does great. Against top 5 defenses or top 5 teams, he folds. And he's done it for 2 years now, even when he won the Heisman. Is that an indicator, a better indicator of the next level issues, or is that just an indicator that his team around him doesn't give him the position to beat a better team?
Well, first of all, if you or I played quarterback, our statistics would be better against the worst teams.
Exactly.
And, everybody falls into that category. Okay. Yeah. So you can't use that against him, but I know as NFL scouts, you take more into count the games against top 20 teams than you do against Bug Tussle U games. When you go play Bug Tussle U 3 times, they're not even going to look at those stats or those games. They're going to wait till you get to the big games when it counts, because in the NFL, there's 17 games of it counts. So you're looking at every game as a must-win when you get there.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and isn't it sort of also amazing? We it's the first year when we sort of did our preview, the whole discussion about conference realignment and players, and in your heart of hearts, would you have been thinking when I think we take right the 1st of August and getting back in now, we're in the middle of the season, 7th week, 8th week here, and the Pac-12 no longer exists. Would you really thought that was going to happen?
I can't even conceive of that. I still, in my brain, am having a hard time with that. But, things have changed so dramatically in the last, 10 years. I don't know why we thought it would be any different in the next 5 years. And, I did a little thing the other day. I was talking to a local group, and I said, if you took the top 25, and I forget which week it was, if you took the top 25, then the Big Ten and the SEC in year 25-25 would have 16 of the top 25 teams ranked in the country right now. So that doesn't leave a lot of room for all those other folks, and we're those two conferences are going to be, at the top. They're going to be the ones that are there every year, and we can go to 12 teams in the playoffs, but it's going to be Big Ten versus SEC.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be interesting. But it is amazing. As I asked you that question a second ago, it just for the first, you know how sometimes when you ask a question or you're thinking about something, something hits you as you're asking. But it just realized to me that there will be no major conference west of the, and I'm using this I'll just say west of the Rockies. How about that?
Because west of the Rockies.
West of the Rockies, there's gonna be no major conference.
Right.
That's just, it's just amazing when you think USC, UCLA, Stanford. You think about, and again, we in the South always think about football. They out there think gymnasts, volleyball, and golf.
Yeah.
All gone now for the most part, and they're going to lose players. I have a feeling because they're not going to want to do the travel that is involved in that.
Well, parents aren't.
Yeah.
Of course, if you pay the players, then all you got to do is funnel some of that money here. Parents, you got $20,000 in travel expenses as well. So if you're paying the players, you just pay the parents, and you tell them here's your expenses to travel to games.
At a certain point in time, and I think you and I talked about this before, and we have I don't name them. I got a person that I talked to some and have talked to in the past is in the AD's office at a major university at a major conference. But we just talk in general. It's a good off the record kind of conversation. But one of the things that was always talked about is the fact that at most schools, especially the bigger schools, you have one program, typically football, that makes the money. Everybody else loses money. At Georgia, it's interesting. The Lady Dog gymnasts are the other program that actually makes money at Georgia. Nobody else does. And it's just, you get to that point to where, so really for these West Coast schools, especially the USCs, the UCLAs, the ones, and all of them are coming east of the Rockies now, but especially those two. I mean, think about this. USC and UCLA in particular are going to have to do away games at Rutgers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a cross-country trip. I mean, everybody going, and USC and UCLA have trouble drawing people in Southern California. They're not going to be a draw in the East Coast. But is it going to be a temptation for some of these to either just say, well, the cost of doing business is X, we just write these, whatever these other programs do? Or do you think it will actually be a hindrance to some of these programs later on, that they're just not going to pay the parents, they're not going to pay the player, and they're just going to say, this ain't worth it?
Well, this is what I think is going to happen. I think we're going to have football conferences, and then we're going to have regional everything else conferences. That makes sense to me. So it probably won't happen. But if you took all the other sports and made them regional, if you had 4 regions. North, east, south, west, maybe 6, mid-country, north and south. You do it that way. But to me, now you limit your expenses. You don't call it. It's you can have how many ever teams you have, and then you play, and then you end up sharing the revenue, and the NCAA or whoever this conference facilitator is handles all of that. But they can't. It doesn't make sense to try for the tennis team at UCLA to go to Rutgers to play. That makes no sense. You got to figure out a better way to handle all the other sports out there without them having to travel all over the country.
Well, you could almost call it, Coach, a Olympian sports versus and then a football set. Because most every other one involves some kind of Olympian track, golf, those kind of things are all some Olympian type of track. And that may end up, actually helping our Olympic programs a little bit. I mean, there may be more interest in some of those programs, especially because like Georgia, and I didn't know this, talking about some of these programs, but do you know that there is no university in the state of Georgia that offers a Division I wrestling program?
No, I didn't know that.
None. There's zero.
Yeah.
And I think Florida is similar. Alabama's similar. I mean, there's a lot of. It's more of it's that grouping, like you said. It's that Midwest, West, of area. But it goes into it. Looking over the landscape, is Texas A&M's pockets deep enough to wait 2 more years to drop $20 million on Jimbo's salary, or are they going to look? It happens every year. I mean, between Jimbo and the Texas A&M, it just isn't there. I mean, do you think Texas A&M going to be patient enough to wait this out, or what?
I don't know. That is, to me, that's you used to say, when you and I used to say, that's the $64,000 question.
Yeah.
Because of the TV show.
Yeah.
Now that's the $64 million question.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about. And I think everybody is rethinking 10-year deals too.
Oh, yeah.
Now, everybody is rethinking those 10-year deals. Michigan State is, rethinking it. Everybody's, I don't think you'll see that again. But can Texas A&M? I don't know what they can do. I don't know what their situation is. I know they have dug themselves a very deep hole, and it's one I wouldn't want to be in if I were the AD and the president at A&M right now.
Yeah, because you can't answer it. It's just not an easy answer question. And there was another one. There's another coach out there. I can't remember where it was, but they were talking about sort of a similar aspect. I mean, they've got into these deals, and look, I don't blame the coach. I don't blame the agents. I mean,
yeah,
they're the most disposable people on the team are the coach. In most anything, because they'll. I mean, it's easier to get rid of a coach than it is to get rid of 60 players, and but it is sort of amazing that Texas A&M was the early adapter of the let's buy the team. I mean, in a sense, let's go use the NIL to the extent. He brought in all those kids. Some of them have now left. None of them were attached to Texas A&M. They were attached to the dollar, and they just didn't have it. And it's just, you just see this, building over and over again. And Texas A&M is not a school like, say, an Ole Miss that will put up with Lane probably a lot longer than Texas A&M will end up putting up with Jimbo.
Yeah. You just don't know. Every college has their breaking point. Every athletic department has their breaking point. Every alumni base has their breaking point. And where is their breaking point that they won't accept mediocrity? And that's basically what they're getting for their dollar right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting also for Lincoln Riley. And let's go back to USA, go back to what it was left of the Pac-12. There's a real probability that they're going to have 4 losses this year. I mean, and now he was trying to downplay it, saying, well, we overachieved last year and they're not up to the expectations this year. Okay, I get it. But I mean, you brought in all these players, you went and got, folks, and you're still in the same boat that you were last year.
Yeah. Well, and that's, we live in a world of hype.
Yes.
That's the problem. You have to make sure not to hype yourself as a coach and hype your program as a coach. You have to let outside people do the hype. You do the toning down of what it is. And I think the coaches that have learned to handle the hype have done a good job for themselves of being able to not the expectations don't get out of hand. And that's what you can't let happen, because it happens in a heartbeat. Before you know it, they put you on a pedestal, and you better stay up there or you're in trouble.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of coach, I want to get one coach in SC, and I want to go to the issue with Harbaugh up at Michigan. But the one who seems to transcend time is Nick Saban. Nick Saban seems to be, he's at constant, even last week. I mean, they've now started putting him weekly on the Pat McAfee show. Now, think about this for a second. And I already see the head shake going. I get it, okay? But McAfee reaches a whole different audience that nobody else was reaching. But now they put Saban on there every week on Thursday. And last week, McAfee was going off about 2 weeks ago about, now you're back, you're going to win that. And he said, what do you think about, getting back the SEC championship, winning a national championship? And Saban said, well, we play another team this week, and we're going to play this team this week. I mean, he's just so good at it. I mean, and it's amazing.
Well, he's learned through the years how to handle it because he's been at the top so long and so much. Yeah. He's learned how to handle it. Those people that haven't been at the top that much don't understand it. They get caught up in it too. The coaches do. That's a problem for us.
Exactly, but behind every good coach is always somebody else, and Nick Saban has one that's come out this year that, and them again. I do not, that, but Miss Terry has come out, and I think she honestly had a little bit of she had influence this year on Saban. It looks like a little bit.
Well, like you just said, every good coach has an unbelievable wife that has helped them through the tough times. Any long-standing coach does. There's a lot of people that are quick fix people that don't, but those wives are strong as a Mack truck now, and they've had to be through the years. And I used to tell people I'd rather face the press after a loss than my wife, because they keep you humble. They find a way to keep you humble.
Well, I love it how she said, go get in their face the next week. I mean, for the last few weeks, Saban has been back throwing headphones again. And Alabama's been playing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. All right, let's switch gears. Over the past couple of weeks, this just seems to follow Jim Harbaugh, okay? No matter where he goes, it's always something, okay? And that might be, you may know him. I don't know him. I mean, the personality-wise here, it just may be who he is. He doesn't seem to be the same as his brother, that's for sure. But now we're into this sign-stealing issue. And there's been some video that's come out, especially in the Ohio State game last year. If you've seen this, I don't know if you have, where the quarterback for Ohio State they're in the huddle, they call they how they do now, they turn to the sidelines to pick up the audible. Well, when the Ohio State quarterback turns to the sidelines to pick up the audible, you can see the Michigan coaches behind them all scrambling to look at the sign. Immediately when the sign comes up, they all start either going this, like pass, or then they start giving signals back into the defense. Now, coincidental? Whatever. Now they're saying that Harbaugh actually sent people to other games to do this. Prime coach was asked about it, and he said, well, you still got to defend whatever's called against you. So he said, I don't really care. But it's caused a huge stir, even to where Michigan State said they didn't want to play possibly last week for player safety reasons. I think Michigan State has enough issues on their plate than dealing with that. What's your take? Give us the gold standard on this one. What is this, just normal football and people being hyperplectic about stuff that they don't need to be worried about? Or is this really a problem?
It's not a problem. Let's put it this way. It should not be a problem. If you think somebody has your signs, change your signs. That's part of the game. If you think they got your signals, change the signals. How hard can that be? If you think they got them, the signal for pass this week is now run. The signal for run is now pass. Come on. We always want to tear down who's at the top rather than our butts trying to strive to get to the top.
Yeah.
That they don't. Michigan's way up there. They've been up there, and so everybody's trying to tear them down, and they pick every little thing. When is it incumbent upon the person that feels like they've been violated to change what they're doing?
Exactly. It just got me. But it goes back. Did you ever hear the story of Mike Leach at Oklahoma?
No.
The Oklahoma, Texas, getting ready for the Red River rivalry. Mike Leach, and again, we've talked about Mike, and we miss Mike. Can you imagine the press conferences this year with Mike Leach? They would be awesome. I mean,
yes.
I would just go. That's all I'd watch. But Mike Leach came up with this idea and he carried it all out. He wrote out an entirely opposite playbook. In other words, for all their plays that they called, he wrote the exact opposite of what they would do. Had a graduate assistant go on the field during practice or before the game, at some point before the game of the OU Texas game. Texas assistant picked it up. They took it to the coaches. Coaches actually sat there because it was the first 10 scripted plays or something like that. And they went off of this fake playbook, and Oklahoma scorched them. And it took them about a quarter and a half to figure out, wait, this ain't working. But that's the way you handle sign stealing.
Yes. Oh, and I didn't know it was Mike Leach, but I knew somebody had done that, dropped a fake, play calling list, and that is great. That is great.
It was classic. ESPN did a whole segment on it. They went back to the old, and it was just classic. And Mike talked about it later. He said, "Yeah." Had the Texas coaches even talking about it. Yeah, we followed that. We did.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, and that's what you're saying. Handle the problem. Quit complaining and handle the problem.
Exactly. Hey, and we got a few minutes left, and I want to switch to the NFL. Which the NFL also, it just is one of those years where the NFL seems to be matching the NCAA with sort of the season. I mean, no dominance. I mean, of course, Kansas City with the addition of Taylor Swift and all is now, they're back to being Kansas City. And, but, the rest of the league is just, 3 and 3s.
That's a lot of the league now, but that's kind of what they want. They want that in the NFL, and they try to get that in the NFL so that every fan base stays juiced, thinking we got a chance. They don't want any, they hate it that who's the only team with one loss, with one win still. I can't remember who it is, but there's one team that's only got one win. Everybody else, at least now, because the Giants won this week and somebody else won. But my point is, they want everybody to be in the mix and to be there.
Carolina's still undefeated. Let me rephrase that.
Winless.
They're winless.
Winless.
Carolina's still winless, and you got Arizona at 1-6. So yeah.
So that's the. They don't want that. They don't want it to be 6 teams by midseason that are dominant and running away with it. They love this. They love this parity that everybody's got a chance. And but that's how the draft is set up. That's how free agency is set up. They want to create that as much as they possibly can. Salary cap is the same thing. Right. It keeps everybody fairly close there.
Well, it's interesting to see also, Coach, and looking at it, from the perspective of also how they coach and how they go about this. And you see the issues that I won't say dominance, but you see the personalities coming out a little bit more. The new coach who's been there, 2 years now? Because he came in after you, didn't he? The coach at Miami?
Yes, he did.
He's a different animal.
Yeah.
He's almost a Mike Leach in the pros in some ways.
Yeah. He looks like a math professor out there, but he's extremely smart, and he's got a great grasp of his players and what they can do and how to make them successful on the field. That he's doing an amazing job with the people he has, which is that's a coach's job. Make the most with the players that you have, help them be successful. That's what you try to do. But this game in the NFL is a different game. we've talked about this before, but the game in the NFL is matchups. Okay, you got a corner out. How do I get my receiver over there on your corner with motions and all of that? How do I create a matchup that's favorable for me to go win the matchups? And it's individual matchups. Whereas in college, you get more scheme involved. It's scheme versus scheme. And high school, it's almost totally scheme versus scheme. It's not individual, trying to match up individual people on individual guys, because it's just hard to do that sometimes. So I love watching both games, or I love watching all three games, high school, college, and pro, to see the difference in those games.
By the way, shout out to the Hab Central Raiders. Actually have played some decent ball this year. I've kept up a little bit with it. They're looking good. That's up in our neck of the woods. Of course, you still have Gainesville and the University of Beaufort and Mill Creek and others who are back on top. Speaking of quarterbacks, I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Monday night game. And Monday night game, I've gotten to where I watch when the Manning brothers are doing their Manning cast. I watch that more than any, just to listen. And Peyton made a big deal, and James will love this, our producer, because he's a big Minnesota fan. Shout out to Minnesota for winning that ball game. But Kirk Cousins is the everyman quarterback who just goes out and performs. And Peyton made a big push about the fact that after the Addison got the interception ripped out of his arms in the very first time, that he went back to it, and he ended up being the star of the game. Is that, I mean, and I'm not trying to be repetitive here, but Coach, explain for folks who may not watch football as much. That's a big time move that can be applied to life. It can be applied to Congress. It can be applied to business. Is that leaders lead and leaders build people up? Is that Kirk Cousins being that leader?
Yo, absolutely. And if you know him as a person, like I have been able to find out about him through the years, that's who he is. He's an amazing leader. He builds people up. He doesn't tear them down. Does he get after them? Yes. But even when he gets after them, he gets after them positively, not negatively. And I mentioned it before. It's easy when somebody's at the top to tear them down.
Yeah.
But the great ones find a way to build people up. Not tear people down.
And that's just always good to see. And for folks, some of you may not like football, some of you do, but the life lessons that come out of sports are incredible. And I think that was just I could do a whole podcast on leadership. And instead, I could show you 5 clips of plays in the Minnesota game the other night that says, this is what leadership looks like. This is what not giving up looks like. And I think Kirk would have done that even if the kid had missed again. I think he would have still said, look, we got a plan here. But it was just awesome to watch. It
was. And the thing about it is, that's not just show, that's not just for Monday Night Football. That's Kirk Cousins every week.
Perfect way to sort of segue out. Before we go, though, if I told you it would be Georgia, Alabama, SEC championship game, am I wrong?
No.
Okay. Michigan, Ohio State. Who's the champion of the Big Ten?
Michigan.
Okay. I can see that too. Does the Pac-12 finally get somebody, the old Pac-12 finally get somebody in the college football playoff?
Who? The only one that's got a chance is Washington.
Yeah.
They've got a chance, but they've got Utah is the team that just won't let anybody, they just out there plugging along and just seem to knock off the big ones every time they turn around.
Their coach needs to be definitely Coach of the Year nomination. But before we go, I also got to say the group of 5 in the New Year's 6 bowls will be my Air Force Falcons. Go Falcons. Air Force is kicking it this year. Looking really good. Coach, it's always great to have you on. We'll get you back on pretty quick because we got some the end of the year coming up. I want to get some takes on what we look at in the playoffs, but also the championship series as we go. I can't think of a better 45 minutes to spend with somebody is just golden, like Chan Gailey, that gives you advice, that gives you techniques, and also leadership advice. Coach, we appreciate you always being on the Doug Collins podcast.
Doug, it's always great to be with you, buddy. Wish you the best.
Thanks. All right, folks, that's it for this special edition of the Friday's Finest with Coach Chan Gailey. Glad to have with us. The gang will be back in play next week. James, Chip, myself will all be back in the saddle next week. And so, folks, out of here. We'll see you next time on the Doug Collins podcast.